I've often thought that it's the not knowing aspect of cold cases that would be the most heartbreaking. Knowing logically that someone you love is gone forever, but emotionally wondering if they're still out there somewhere must be heartbreaking. This is the situation our first victim's family unfortunately finds themselves in. 12-year-old Jonathan Alexander Camacho lived with his parents, Byron and Patria, twin brother Jason, and older brothers Christopher and Jared in Draper, Utah. He played soccer and baseball, was learning to play the viola, and actively participated in Boy Scouts and his family's church activities. By all accounts, he was a sweet boy with a good life. In the summer of 2000, that would all change. That summer, the Camacho family decided to take a vacation to Washington. They either visited the town of Oak Harbor or Whidbey. Sources are conflicted. What sources do agree on is that the family went for a hike in Deception Pass State Park, a park known for its cove, cliffs, and forests. At approximately 3 p.m., Jonathan and his family were hiking along the main beach trail at the southern end of the park. This is where Jonathan became separated from the rest of his family. They last saw the boy near a cliff overlooking an 80-foot drop to the ocean below. Search crews were quickly dispatched to the area. After 3 days of careful searching, they found one of his possessions near the cliff. There was also evidence of disturbed earth and vegetation. All of these signs point to a terrible, tragic fate. Jonathan most likely lost his footing and tumbled 80 feet to his untimely death. However, his body has never been found. Jonathan did fall into the ocean, though, meaning that his body could easily have been swept away, especially because so many days passed before people began to gather an idea of what had happened to him. His family accepted this hypothesis. After all, the evidence was all there. Jonathan was last seen by the cliff, and marked up ground suggested he had accidentally tumbled off. However, the lack of a body to officially confirm this theory renders this case cold. Jonathan would be 32 if he hadn't disappeared. Whatever happened that day by the cliff, it was a tragedy that stole a son, brother, and active community member. There is far less information on the next case than on Jonathan. Ronald William Frye went missing when he was 15 years old on September 25, 1993, from the town of Coopeville, Washington. He was last seen visiting the beach with friends. After this excursion, the young boy would never return home. He was assumed to be a runaway until a later tip would reopen his case. I couldn't find any information about his family, but they didn't seem to be pushing very hard to find him, which makes me think that perhaps Ronald had a slightly bitter home life. Further corroborating this is the fact that at 15, he already had a large upper arm tattoo of an A within a circle. This is the way every source I found describes the tattoo, an A within a circle, and this leads me to believe that the tattoo was of the anarchy symbol. However, my interpretation of the tattoo's description and of Ronald's home life is utter speculation. I could find exactly one news article on Ronald's case. While the article itself was poorly formatted, it comes from what seems to be a fairly credible local news source. However, this article did get both Ronald's age and the date of his disappearance incorrect, listing him as being 17 at the time of his disappearance and having vanished in 1994. Also, Doe Network, a reliable missing persons website, lists a different detective as working on Ronald's case. However, since this is the only news article that I could find regarding Ronald, and it puts his case in a new and disturbing light, I wanted to share it with you all. One Detective Hawley spoke with the author of the article, explaining that the police force was combing marshes in the Coopville area, searching specifically for Ronald's remains. This was based off of a tip that came decades after the boy's disappearance. The witness claimed that they had seen Ronald talking to a man at Abby's Landing who would later become a convicted sex offender. Allegedly, Ronald walked into the marshes with this man, never to be seen again. I personally have some problems with the story, although I am not claiming whether or not it is true or false. Why did the witness suddenly remember this and report it decades after the fact? What made them remember this casual sighting of two complete strangers when there's practically no media coverage on Ronald's case? Why didn't the article mention who the sex offender was? Why isn't this monumental sighting included in any other articles or websites regarding Ronald? Overall, this article seemed a little off to me, but that is completely my own opinion. Feel free to read it for yourself and let me know what your thoughts on it are in the comments below. Jonathan and Ronald both met tragic, untimely ends, one likely at the hands of misplaced footing, and the other perhaps at the hands of a tangible person with sinister intentions. While there are ideas revolving around both cases, neither boys have been brought home to their families, and decades separate us from them. Please, if you have any information on either of the boys, contact the corresponding numbers in the description below. Please help bring these children home.